Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 20, K.A. Oliver.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with K.A. Oliver. K.A. Oliver is a dynamic storyteller holding degrees in radio, TV, and film from California State University, Fullerton, and an MBA in business. With over 3 decades in entertainment, spanning studios and TV stations, she produced, wrote, and directed many films, defying gender biases and the notion that female-centric stories lack marketability in Hollywood. Oliver took the leap in becoming an author, championing women's resilience in her novels. So, Kay, thank you so much for being on the show. So before we begin, I like to ask this question. Tell us, in your own words, who is K.A. Oliver?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being here and you hosting me. I am a storyteller. I didn't realize that until years later, but I kind of knew from elementary school when I entered a speech contest that I was a very good writer and could tell a good story. And from there, I ended up getting my degrees in radio, TV, film, which is a format of storytelling. Battled my way through Hollywood because that was before all the Me Too movements and all that good stuff. And if that's good stuff. And then took a leap into writing my own novels. So overall storyteller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great to hear. It's always great just to hear the stories of other artists and how, like, their upbringings of what it took for them to discover that passion. So that's really great to hear. I am curious to know, just like, what got you into writing or being a storyteller in the first place? Was it something that you discovered early in life or later on in life? Just tell us about that.
I think earlier in life, and having spoken to a number of other prolific writers, I think that growing up, my brother and I were left alone a lot. And I don't even think latchkey kids were a term back then. But I spent a lot of time, I think, imagining things, being in my room and imagining and telling myself little stories. And I kind of still do that to today on my books. But I think that is really what got me into using that space between my ears to come up with different stories and lots of questions. I was a very curious child. So if I didn't know an answer, I'd make it up. We didn't have the internet, Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And in doing so, that actually has easily helped me cross over into telling stories.
Nice. That's great to hear. Yeah, like I said, it is really great just to hear how someone got started. And, everybody has their own journey that they have, or their own path to follow. Everyone is different and unique in their own ways. Like, for instance, my passion is in filmmaking. So I went to film school and I continue to make films, and I submit them to film festivals and stuff. And it's it's awesome. It's really great. And then networking and collaborating with other artists and filmmakers and writers, directors, all of them, it's just like a really great experience, and just continuing to do that.
So if I could ask, I'll pretend to be the host. What do you like about filmmaking?
Okay. Yeah. I think it's really just, it just goes back to the storytelling. I love to tell stories, and with film, it's just such a visual medium, and there's like so much you can do with, like, just the visuals, sure, but there's also, the writing behind it, the music, the sound design, the post-production, there's just so much that can go into it. So there's so much creativity behind it, and I love just like, I majored in directing, but I've also had my share of doing cinematography and editing and screenwriting, so it's just really like the process of it, and there are days where it's like, I'm writing a bunch, like, just like scripts or something like that, but then there are days where it's like, I get into like that sort of writer's block, and can't even write a word.
Don't you kind of wish life came with the soundtrack?
Yeah.
Then we'd know when we're walking into that room without the light on that there's someone in there. Yeah.
I also love just listening to music, so I have like a bunch of playlists and like movie soundtracks that I listen to. I do want to get back to you and hear more of your story. I guess with one of the questions that I had sent you earlier, which was what pushed you to pivot from Hollywood to writing novels?
So some of the stuff that you brought up, collaboration is great when you're in charge of the film and doing it, and you have power to oversee and do the film and the whole 9 yards. When you are reporting to somebody and having to um, satisfy the higher ups, that collaboration turns into a little bit of loss of power, right? So I would write scripts, and I had a first and last when I worked at DreamWorks. That's, Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg's company, for those of you who don't know. And they would say the script's great, but as you mentioned in the intro, strong female characters are not marketable. Remember, this was, a while ago. And I disagree. And I think there's a lot of women who disagree and are trying to make that change. And with the equal pay movement, that adds to it is the fact that when women get paid the same as men, then they can go out and start their production companies and make those kind of films. So I decided that I had this burning book in my head for a few years and answering the question, why do we dig up every grave we find in Egypt's Sudan? There's more tombs in Sudan than there are in Egypt. That we hold our graveyard sacred. You can't go in and touch those. And so it's like, well, are we disturbing their peace? And that was my question. And so I came up with the book Disturbed Tombs. That was my first novel I wrote. I don't want to say I bit off more than I can chew, because I did it and it worked out, but I didn't realize how complex the novel was until I went to write my second book. But it won 4 awards and Book of the Year included in that. And I thought, I'm onto something. I have a strong female archaeologist who's the lead character, and smart, intelligent, and that book has done great in the marketplace. Now I have 4 books in that series, but that told me when I started winning awards, because every writer, every person who's making something, I don't care if it's a film or not, you don't know how it's going to be received. We all worry about that. We all go, oh, why am I writing this? Who wants to read this? Who wants to watch that? And I know when I made short films for the DreamWorks film festivals that people, I know what the story's saying. And I was in awe when people I had nicely hidden the lead character, so to speak, a female vigilante. It got great. Everybody loved it. And I even heard gasps in the audience when I was sitting there, like, that's the person killing everybody. And, and you could hear people go, oh my God, it's her. And I went, wow, I can write good stuff. So I decided I would take the leap and give it a try. And when I won those awards, I went, I think I'm onto something.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like it's always great just to get that sort of feedback, and like, yeah, like the responses that we get from other people, and the encouragement, it definitely helps drive us to continuing that passion. Like I remember, when I showed, my films to different film festivals and just hearing like the audience's reaction, like that sort of gasp or like that, just to get that reaction, like, oh, it made them feel something, it made them happy, it made them sad, like, that's just like another another reason why I enjoy filmmaking, just to like get that sort of reaction, like it definitely it feels good, like even if like maybe like the film that they're seeing, is a more of a dramatic piece, but just to know that they felt something and it is something that they can take with them, whether it's like the message or like a certain visual, when they see that and it maybe inspires them to do something, like that's awesome. That's, we have a very powerful tool, like I mentioned this before, like in my other episodes, but artists are very powerful, like we have the ability to change people's perspective. And it's just a very great thing, and it can inspire them to follow their dreams, and, maybe they don't have to do it, like a full-time career or anything, but it definitely just helps to have that creativity with them on the side, if they want to do it just like part-time or, just like.
Absolutely. Baby
Mhm.
steps, and then if it's working out for you, go for it. Absolutely. But you have a passion for a reason, and you need to follow that passion. And I know that often people are like, well, I can't stop my job. I can't this or that. You don't have to. I mean, I started writing Disturbed Tunes just before I quit and took that gigantic leap. But now that's what I do. Now I write novels. So but absolutely, I have on my website, which we'll refer to probably at the end of the podcast, um, free writing tips. You don't have to sign up for an email or anything. And even though it's about writing books, there's a lot of good information in there for any passion about taking little steps, about doing little things, learning something new, one way or another. So, and believing in yourself and trusting yourself. Because, like I said at the beginning, you think to yourself, who's going to want to watch this? Who's going to want to read this? And as you know, especially for the first thing that you ever do, self-doubt, absolutely. So we all have it. All artists have it. All creatives, as I like to call people, all creatives have it. And we have to push through that unknowing, that fear, and go with it. And make sure that you have people around you who are supportive, because there are people who don't want you to succeed. And you need to pick those people out and get rid of them, put them over here, and make sure that you have people in your life. I have great friends that my first books, I can tell you, I did little novellas just to learn how to do it. Novellas are smaller books, right? Like a short film, smaller books. And even though there were errors in them and this and that, they were, these are great. These are this, yeah. So as I learned and stumbled through it and finally put the big book together, helped perfect that. But they supported me and said, keep writing, keep writing. These are great. So they knew that the underlying stuff was there. And I just had to learn, get a better editor, that kind of stuff. Because I had some comments on my first books, like, you should have paid for an editor. And I'm like, I did, I paid for it too. And yet there were still typos in the books. So, don't assume somebody didn't do something. I just didn't have the right one. So just the same thing with short films. You write a film and you don't know the first time you make it what the response will be, or if there'll be a response, or if they'll all sit there deadpan. And when you find out you're onto something, keep going. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, yes, definitely, and I'll be sure to check out your website too if those writing tips, like I'll definitely look at that and be sure to, put a link in the description, so other people can check it out and to see the novels and stuff that you've also done. Um, I want to ask you just how did overcoming gender bias shape your storytelling?
Yeah, it definitely, definitely did. Uh, it's still alive today, gender bias, as any working woman or uh, someone working out of the home will tell you that, meaning a housewife or, raising children, um, that I really, really, I fought for some things. I found out one of my coworkers was getting 20,000 more a year, and I went to battle on that. Didn't really succeed, but I went to battle and made them have to look at it. Um, anytime you go in and fight a battle as a female, even if you go in professionally and say, this is an issue and I want to correct this, and here's why, and this is what's this, you're still seen as a problem child. If you were a man doing that, you would be solving a problem. As a woman, she's bringing up the fact that he's getting paid more, with less experience and less degrees than she has. And, they don't want to hear about it. So those kind of battles made me want to write strong female leads that are respected. If they have a partner, that partner is respecting them and they are respecting their partner. I know I'm writing fiction, as some women point out to me, but it is a dream of mine that, we get to some point in the world that we both honor each other, male and female or whatever, and respect each other for who we are and our intelligence and our ability to have careers or passions. Women have passions just like men have passions, and sometimes that's forgotten. And even this, well, not this, was it 2 Oscars ago? I don't even know where we are with the Oscars and all of the COVID and everything. But I think it was this year's Oscars where another female director didn't get nominated, but everybody around her did, like it did to Barbara Streisand when she did Yentl. And you're like, how can you have best actors, best story, best film, and no best director? So you just kind of go, because she's female, you have to wonder. And we're, kind of bring that up. So that shaped my narrative for life. I know that I don't accept anything less than who I am or what I am, and I really don't care if you don't like it. I'll be in the workplace and I will present. I learn to present things in writing. That way, 6 months down the road, when a guy comes up with it, you can go, wait, that was my idea. Here it was. I gave it to you 6 months ago. And I would do that. And people would be like, oh, there she goes again. But, I had to point out, that, someone else came up with this and now you're running with his, but you didn't take mine. So, I would point that out. I would be that little pain in the side that, made sure that I got credit for what I did. And I do that in my books and my storytelling. Like I said, I had a strong female vigilante in my second short film. So, yeah. So that's how it shaped me to still be proactive in that area of life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it is very important to, start that conversation of, women getting more just respect in the industry, and it's obviously still an ongoing process today, but it's great to know that there are people out there that are, vocal about this, and it's important to just have them, get as much pay as they are as the males, and getting more award recognition, like you said, with the Oscars. And like you look back and like I think like the last winner for the Oscars was for directing was Chloe Zhao for Nomadland. And then before that it was like back in 2010, I believe, with the Hurt Locker, the director.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like not even like getting nominations or stuff like that for other direct, it's definitely something that needs to happen more. And just like there's just so much going on out there in the world, just like women not getting recognition, or just like more like, well, for me personally, like getting more Latino representation out there in Hollywood, or, just to hear their stories, and to get like more recognition. And, you do see like the building blocks of it. People are aware and they're voicing their opinions, whether it's on podcasts or on interviews, or just like the films that they make, like there's so many creative people out there. It's not just white males, it's it's Latinos, it's women, it's African Americans, it's people from other countries. It's definitely important just to hear what they have to say, because they have great ideas too, not just males but females, just everybody
Yeah,
in
one of
general.
my champions in the Latino world of being very vocal is George Lopez. You want to
Yes.
talk about a highly, highly intelligent man.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that he's truly recognized for how smart and intelligent he is. But I used to sit there, and be at his shows when they were at Warner Brothers, um, in the stage, and I was just amazed at who he really is, and not just the goofy comedian that you see on TV. When you get to know some of these people behind the scenes, you're like, wow, what in the world? This guy's like genius. So, and he pushes for that a lot, and I totally support that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And he's been around for such a long time. I remember, growing up watching, the George Lopez show back in like the early 2000s. Then, he recently had the show Lopez versus Lopez. So yeah, he's definitely, and then he has, of course, like his comedy specials and all that. So is, people like that definitely have been around for so long, and it's great that they're still continuing that conversation about bringing more, Latino representation in the world. But I feel like, just like I said, just in general, let's get more diverse,
Yes.
culture into Hollywood, just into the world, into like this industry. It's great just to see what they have to say, the films that they make, the stories that they write. And again, like, everybody's gonna have opinions. It's not like everyone's gonna love it. Like, but again, that's just, it all goes back to just doing what they love and just wanting just to see their stories on the screen or on the page. So it's just really great to just continue that conversation.
I don't know if you've seen the Ed Sullivan documentary. I think it's on Netflix. Don't quote me on that part. But he went against television norms, and he brought in a lot of artists that all other shows would not have on, and most of them of black, as they would, back then they would, so Diana Ross, and whoever he had on his show, despite the fact that the television station really didn't want it, but he was so in charge of his own show that he was able to do it. It's a really good documentary.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'll definitely check it out. Sounds like a interesting watch. I did want to ask, because you mentioned, reading strong female characters in your novels and stuff. So could you explain your creative process for developing these strong female characters?
Absolutely. I am not a plotter. No, so you've got by the seat of your pants and plotters. Plotters write down, this chapter's going to say this, and this. I don't do that. I have it in my head, which is, a scary place to be. But I see it, I think, also partly of my background in motion pictures. I can see it as a movie in my head, right? And when I direct it, I could see exactly what I wanted, even though then I would you have to plot out because you've got other people working with you. But in my stories, I know where I'm going to start. I have an idea of what's going to happen in the middle. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes my characters take me somewhere else. And I know the ending. So I tend to just sit down and start writing. And one of my writing tips is, don't worry about your edits. Don't worry about anything. Just get the story down on paper, right? Or on your computer, whatever it is. Stories, great novels, are not made in the first draft. They're not even close in the first draft. No great novel has ever been written in the first draft. It is in the editing process where novels are made. So don't sit there and criticize your work when you're not even really done. Even if you've written the whole story, don't criticize it. You got to go back through it. You might move chapters around. You might take something out. You might add more. It's a live beast, just like a movie. That the kind of music you put behind a movie will make the atmosphere, and bring the movie alive. Unlike a movie, a book, I write more detail. In a movie, you visually show the detail, though you have it in your script. But if you want someone to be an organized person who is strategic, you're going to have a chess set sitting next to them in their office, a modern day, chess set to show that they're strategic. Now, you as an audience member see that chess set. You don't really think about, oh, that's a chess set, but you know that it means something to you. You pick up a hint that that person's, strategic. And if it's somebody who lives off of their gut feeling, they might have, I'm actually doing, can't remember the name of that show, but Simon was in it. He had a wooden desk. He had books. He didn't have any computers. He didn't have anything but a couch in his office. And that told you a lot about the character without having to say it like you do in a book. So that is the difference I found, obviously between film and writing. But, you do a lot of that. And it's just kind of fun to do, to put in. I don't do a lot of foreshadowing. I'm kind of a student of Spielberg, where something just happens. So you could be reading along, it could be a drastic scene, and something silly happens in my books. And all of a sudden people are like, what? Or something silly is happening and bam, something drastic happens. So that is part of my writing style. And sometimes my characters will take me on a road when I start to write. Sometimes I have to stop. I've caught myself writing. And when that I'm not in this book, and I have to go back and change the wording. It's like there's two characters in there, not me. And I become very much of the book. So that's how I do it. So it's seat of the pants kind of girl, but I see the book in my head. So that's my writing style.
Yeah, that's great because everybody has like their own sort of writing process. A lot of people, they can like plan out every single little thing, and then you have others that just kind of just jump right in, just start writing, and like you said, like that first draft is like you just got to get that out of the way. It's not going to be good, but you got to at least have something because you can edit something, but you can't edit nothing, just
Right.
have something down on the page, and then from there, it's all up in the editing, it's all about, moving scenes around, like you said, or adding scenes, or taking out scenes, or changing the dialogue, adding characters, or, changing other characters. There's just so much you can do, and doing that can also bring in new ideas that you hadn't have thought of, or like we said, collaborating, networking. Other people, like we said, have great ideas. A great idea can come from anyone. It can come from a female. It can come from, a Latino. It can come from, just like there's so many people out there that have really great ideas. And I just feel like, yeah, just listening to what they have to say, because they can have something that you probably would have never even thought of. And it can
And
just,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's anybody. So whenever I would direct a film, and I'd pull the group together for that, this is how it's going to work. This is what we're going to do. I've always said, I don't care what your position on my film is. If you're sweeping the floors, pulling the cables, I don't care. If you have an idea, I want to hear it. Yes, I'm the final on that, putting it in or using it or trying it. But I want to hear an idea. I don't want you to come up after we're done shooting for the day and say, I thought about this, and I look at you and I'll be like, you're fired because you should have come to me while we were doing the film, that filming, and tell me that, about this idea, because I would have probably used it. Now I've torn the set down and we're on our merry way. And, so I don't care what you do or who you are, male, female, I don't, what your position is, so as and anybody who studied film, some of the greatest ideas were never written. Indiana Jones pulling out his gun when the guy had the saber, things that weren't even there. Something that happens, Robert Redford in Sneakers. I was there that day. They were shooting a scene where he's supposed to jump over a bar. He doesn't make it. He was supposed to make it. And it actually cuts to one of the lead characters, like, wow, you can see the surprise on his face, like, oh my God, are you okay? They left it in the film. But that was not what was written, right? So a lot of things as a director or a writer, things will pop up either way. And that's something you never would have thought of in a million years, right? And you put it in. It's, the humanity of it. It brings the human to life. That's what's the difference between AI and writing yourself and shooting yourself, is the humanity that we have, that we all have, that we all share. We all trip. We all bust out laughing. And you need to incorporate that into what you're doing and what you're making, so that, a lot of readers tell me, I feel like I know your characters. I feel like I understand them because they're doing things that I do. And, and I learned that obviously from my days in film. So,
Yeah, definitely. Like that sort of improv that actors have, like it definitely just helps them, like you said, like more human, and, like I'm the type of director that I do like to, have my actors, just like, obviously, we have the scene and we know what's going on, but if there's anything that kind of just, hits them, or just kind of like that spur of the moment type of thing, let them go on. I let them do their thing. And then when the time is right, then I'll say cut, and, you'd be amazed just like how something that they did that was different that you hadn't written, it can just have this whole nother meaning to it. And it's like, see, there you go. That's why they didn't. That's why, if I had said cut earlier, then we wouldn't have gotten that sort of reaction, or that sort of, thing that they did with their
spontaneous,
hands,
yeah.
spontaneous. Exactly. Yeah. So I always feel like that's very important to have as a director, that sort of open-minded sort of feel, because if you're always just like, oh, you have to do this, that, then it's like they're almost like, it almost feels like kind of robotic, like, and like, we talked, like you mentioned AI, and, I've had this discussion with other episodes and other podcasters, other, guests and stuff. But yeah, the whole world of AI, and it's a mixed bag for me, like I tell people, it's a tool that we have, but we can't let it overtake our writing. We can't.
Creativity.
Yes, exactly. And like if you need just like, you can use it for just like little things and stuff like that, but you can't just like let it overtake you,
For me, it's kind of like a tool for ideas sometimes, especially
Mhm.
when writing my blogs. For my book or a sentence, I have a sentence in the book that I'm just like, this isn't working. That I try to do it again, and sometimes I'll put it in and say, improve this sentence, and then I'll go, okay, that gives me an idea, and then I go back and write the sentence my way. To get something that you kind of get a little stuck there for a minute, and I use it that way. But otherwise, it's very cold and inhumane with regard to character building and storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I do want to talk about because we mentioned like the novels that you've written, and do you want to maybe discuss like, a certain novel that you have out now or any other like projects that you have currently in the works?
Well, yeah, I have one in the works right now. I just released the fourth book called Dark Cold Eyes. It is in a series called the Shaw Investigation Series. And it starts with a book that I wondered, what would I do? Again, questions. What would I do if I found a confession letter in a house I inherited? It's a 1909 confession letter of a serial killer who nobody knew about. And he had stuck it behind this mirror in this house. And when she inherits the house, and has to go backwards, like, why would that letter be in this house? Who is this person? Yada yada. Where are these women? Because back then, we don't have all the forensics and everything we have now. Missing women were just missing women, and so I tackle that conversation. And they go on a hunt, and from there, people love that book. This fourth one is the same couple, the Shaws, that are investigating their first active case. They like to do cold cases. Most the other three books are cold cases, but I just did that one. And the book that has the most recognition is Road to Elysium. Producers have been looking at it to make a film out of it. It is started off with a news clip, one of those feel-good news clips at the end of a newscast. And I went online to find out more, and there was nothing about the story. So I said, so this has got to be brought out. This journey of hope and redemption. And it starts off with a character named Ken, who has lost everything in his life of importance, meaning his wife and his child. And he's in depression, deep depression. And a set of events happen where he instinctively reacts, not even thinking twice about it. And by doing that instinctive reaction, it changes his whole life. And it brings hope to him and a young man that he ends up meeting, and he becomes a mentor. And it's kind of like, a mashup. It is Blindside meets It's a Wonderful Life, because it has that Wonderful Life community ending to it. And that one's won 10 awards and Book of the Year as well. So people have asked, I've got a script. I don't like writing scripts, but I have a script because when you're a novelist, you free flow. You don't have to format and put headers. And yeah. So, but I do have it, and I do have representation that, is helping to market the book out there. So you might one day see it in a film. Who knows? I might end up back in Hollywood. Um, who knew? But yeah, so that's, and the one I'm writing now is really, I've really become one with it because it's about a writer. And it's about a writer who writes mystery novels. I like a lot of action. I like Clive Cussler's books. I like John Clancy books. I write a lot of action in my books. Yeah, females like action, and
Mhm.
we can do action. My one of my books is loves calculated risk. It's about an accountant who tries to save a client from criminal charges, knowing that the client didn't do it. And it's all action. It's being shot at. There's the mafia. You've got a casino that's run by bad people. And, and it's, one of those kind of books. It's all action. And I personally love action, but having a lead female character with a supporting male character, we can do anything together. So that is how I write my books. And the one I have now has a lot of action in it because the writer is accused of writing this book and then doing the crimes that are in the book. So he has to prove his innocence because he's not the one doing them. But, so it's been really fun writing it. I actually stopped to do this podcast. So I'll get right back to it. I've left him dangling.
Oh
So
man.
yeah.
Oh, that's really awesome, and I'll definitely be able to check out those books that you have that are out right now. I mean, they definitely seem like a really great read. Um, I do want to talk about because I know you mentioned that you've been in Hollywood for such a long time, and just like being a filmmaker myself, I was just curious to know, just like well, first off, just like what have been some of the highlights of your career in Hollywood, and just like if there's like any advice that you want to give to other artists or filmmakers or authors out there, so it's kind of a two-parter, just like what were some of the highlights of your Hollywood career, and then just like advice that you want to give to people that are listening in.
I would certainly, um, when I was going to college and I got my radio, TV, film career, it really boosted me into the world of film. I didn't have any connections, so I didn't, I wasn't part of a film family or anything. And I knew a lot. When I got to do internships. In fact, my college, you could intern as a senior. I switched my major for 2 years so that I could intern through the drama department, so that I could do more internships, get my feet wet, be on sets, learn things. I offered at any time, what can I do? What can I learn? And I would take on, I don't care what the job was, I would do something. I got known as, yeah, you want to hire her because she's going to do whatever it takes. So I started to build that reputation. And then I landed my first job at KNBC station. And learning, and when you're in a union position, you have to be a little careful because you can't do things that can't violate union rules, but you can certainly learn, you can certainly observe, you can certainly ask questions, um you know try to figure out who the right people are, because there will be people who want to uh gossip doesn't start in gossip magazines. As you know, Hollywood is very there's a lot of gossip and falsehoods that happen in Hollywood. It's just literally gossip magazines probably grew out of that, in my opinion. Don't quote me. Um, but learn as much as you can, and then if you can get someone that you admire mentor you, um, that's great. But, people want to talk about themselves. I did informational interviews. I went to some people. One of my person I met at a function who helped run Paramount Studios for a number of years. I contacted him. Yeah, come on in. Let's talk. And join organizations. Join the TV Academy if you can. Join the Motion Picture Academy if you can. Independent filmmakers if you can. Join those associations. Go to those events. I was living in Orange County, driving 2 hours to go to TV Academy events, one way, and, meet people, network. And you never know where they're going to go, where they're not going to go. I got into NBC because a friend was working at NBC. He stopped working in the motion picture industry years ago, but I went on. So you never really know, what's going to take place. Networking, networking, networking. And if you're at home and you're like, I just don't feel like going, go anyway, because you don't know what that night might hold for you, who you might meet.
Yeah. No, definitely, like, yeah, networking is like the number one thing that I would tell people, because there have been, several networking events here in Chicago. That's where I'm from, Chicago. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's going to that or other like film festivals around there, so there's definitely so much that you can do. And then just like with like the technology that we have, being able to talk with, people like you, like that when you're in, another state, or another country, like, so just being able to hear, their, I mean, we've talked about this before, but just to hear their ideas, and just to hear the stuff that they have and the stuff that you have, and then, hopefully collaborate with something and make something wonderful,
Right.
so.
And
Mm.
join organizations that you belong to. Women in film, Latinos in film, whatever it is, make sure that, because then they support each other and help each other move forward.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, if is there anything else that you want to mention, before
Yeah.
we sign off?
You mentioned earlier. So, like I said, I have free writing tips on my website, which is my name, KAYAOliver.com. How do you stop writing blocks? 2 tricks I've learned. Either way I do it. I never finish a chapter and close my day and go off. I leave a paragraph unfinished. I leave a sentence incomplete, so that when I go back to it to write some more, I read that paragraph again and go, oh, that's where I was. And I start writing again. So it helps, you're back in that creativity mode. You just don't do it all at once or leave it somewhat finished. By ending a chapter, it's somewhat finished. And now you're like, what am I going to do for the next chapter? You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you have written and leave it somewhere in between, so that when you go back and read where you left off, you go right back into that mode. That's one of the things that I talk about in one of my blogs.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.